First, let's start with this case. A few years ago, my wife and I got a letter from a woman claiming to be my wife's daughter, Laurel, who wanted to meet with her. She'd told me that she'd given up a child for adoption when she was young, so I was expecting that this might happen. What I didn't expect was that the truth was there was never any adoption. She just left the baby with the father and bailed. The worst thing about this is that when Laurel was 12, she wrote my wife begging for help. Her response was to write her the nastiest reply imaginable. I've since had a chance to read it, that basically blamed her for her problems and threatened her against contacting her again and ruining her family. I couldn't believe it. Not only has she been lying this whole time, but she actively had contact and chose to abandon her a second time while we were married. This has all been an emotional dumpster fire, but that's an issue of its own. We've been in contact and building a relationship for the last few years. So much therapy. So far, we've kept this all away from our kids. At this point, it's been a few years, and there's interest in having everyone meet. Thing is, between my wife and Laurel, they've come to an agreement to tell the kids and everyone else in the family that Laurel is a family friend. Absolutely not. I'm sick of the lying. What they call each other is their own deal, and I don't expect that to change. But I'm not lying anymore. I don't like lying to my kids as a policy, but lying to them about who's related to them and who isn't is dangerous. I only want them meeting if we can tell them the truth. Now I'm getting into it with my wife, Laurel, and my parents, the only outside people who know. They say I should go along with it, not for my wife's sake, but for Laurel's. I understand why she would want that, but I don't think I care anymore. The kids need to know. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. The fallout from lying will be far worse than telling the truth up front if she's ever found out. And you'll be just as guilty as her in your kids' eyes for lying by omission. If she's that ashamed, then she shouldn't be bringing Laurel round the family. You're not in the wrong, so your wife wants to continue this lie forever. Your kids are going to find out eventually. It's going to happen no matter how hard your wife protects her lie. Just doing a DNA test from Ancestry will uncover it. A relative who knows can slip up. Does she want the kids to find out like that? They might hate her forever for it. This lie is going to cause an avalanche of issues, and your children deserve to know this person is their sister. Their sister also deserves to know her siblings as siblings, not a generic friend. Hasn't your wife damaged her enough with the abandonment? I can't imagine being the daughter who was treated this way. As for you, I don't think I could stay with a person capable of this. She's been lying to you, and that's not forgivable to me. There is nothing to stop you from being honest with your own children. You don't have to keep the secret. What is your wife going to do? Divorce you? She would be doing you a favor. She isn't a good person. She rejected her own daughter twice. She had 30 years to correct this, and she didn't. She wants to keep it going. You're not in the wrong. I would chew her butt out for treating her own daughter this way. If it were me, then she would 1. Apologize to the kid and beg her to forgive her for being this horrible. 2. Acknowledge her as our daughter, much less hers. 3. Give her a place to be a normal kid and do the best we can for her. And if she didn't do all 3, then I'd file for divorce and try my best to get full custody of the kids. No one needs someone that toxic in their lives. Next up, I, 49, was married to my wife for 20 years. I lost her in a car accident 8 years ago. We had 2 beautiful daughters together. Maeve, 18 now, 10 when her mother passed, and Alex, 16 now, 8 when her mother passed. I am very close with my daughters, but they were both definitely mama's girls. My wife was a magnetic woman. She was beautiful, intelligent, kind, and people were drawn to her. An important thing to know about my wife is that she had a passion for writing. She was unfortunately in a profession where she didn't write much, so she did a lot on her own time. One of her favorite things to write was letters. She wanted people to know that she cared about them. After she had each of my daughters, she wrote them a letter. She wrote each within days after their births and wanted to give them away on their graduation days. She put them in the firebox in our basement to avoid losing or forgetting about them. She wrote the letters with the intention of giving them to our daughters herself 18 years later, as a sort of time capsule type of thing. Both letters contained mostly words of wisdom and information about what was going on when they were born. Maeve graduated from high school today, and I went to her room with the letter tonight. I let her cry on my shoulder as she read it, and at first she seemed happy to have her something directly from her mother. However, after she read it, she turned to me looking surprisingly angry. She asked why I had waited so long to give it to her. She had so many rough moments and heartbreak in the last 8 years, where all she wanted was her mother's wisdom, and I withheld the letter. I told her that I was just doing what her mother had said she wanted, and Maeve shot back that her mother also hadn't planned on being in the accident. Alex heard the shouting and came into the room, and Maeve told her about the letter. Now they're both upset and don't want to talk to me. I feel so awful about this whole situation. I was raised by my single mother after my own dad took off. So on one hand, I've always wanted to be the best father I can, and I feel terrible that I withheld something that would have brought them comfort. On the other hand, my wife had very specific instructions about her intentions with the letters, and I just wanted to follow through with that. So now I'm very conflicted, and I just want to know, am I in the wrong? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. At the end of the day, those letters are for their graduations. No other time. If their mother was still alive, they wouldn't have gotten it until you gave it to her. I do understand their side, though. I don't know what your daughters have gone throughout the years, and I'm sure the letter would have really helped. But at the end of the day, those letters were a gift for their graduations. And I believe you did the right thing. I personally would have listened to your wife like you did, so I believe your beauty. You're not in the wrong. No one is in the wrong. This is a fragile, emotional situation. I have been writing in journals to my daughter since she was born, and plan on giving them to her when she turns 18. I'm sure if I passed, my husband would have also withheld them, thinking he was doing right by me the way he always has. You were just trying to honor your wife. I hope they can eventually forgive you, because it's not as if you did it to intentionally hurt them. You're not in the wrong. Those words may not have been meant for them earlier, and they may not have been as meaningful when they were 8 and 10. She is touched because she's adult enough to appreciate this gesture. When she's even more of an adult, she may understand why you had to honor her wishes. Right now, you have to go with what you had, the wishes she left behind. Next up, my F-51 best friend Ron, I'm 59, passed away suddenly 3 days ago. We have been best friends since I was 18, almost 34 years. We live in different states now, but had the kind of friendship where long distance didn't matter. Ron was always there for me. We could talk on the phone about anything for hours. He would have jumped on a plane and been there for me in a moment. My husband Dan, I'm 61, been together 24 years, always hated Ron. Over the years, Dan would make fun of Ron, get jealous and mad when we talked, even kicked Ron out of our house at 2 a.m. once when he visited. When I found out Ron died, I was quietly devastated. No hysterics, I didn't really want to talk about it. Ron and I had planned to be best friends forever. He was the only person I could truly trust 100% in this world. My husband is literally jealous, even though Ron is no longer alive. Dan said, "Well, you wouldn't care if my mom died, so why should I care about a guy you were friends with?" Which isn't even true about his mom. Dan has no close friends he has kept up with for so long. Dan acts as though I should be over this in 3 days and yelled at me for being sad. He fought with me and acts extra mean. Also, we just got destroyed by Hurricane Milton. My brand new car is totaled, saltwater flooded, the roof of my house is messed up, and both insurance companies are trying to avoid paying. It's been a bad couple of weeks. I told Dan he was just jealous because Ron and I were so close. I never had any romantic thing with Ron, ever. We were strictly platonic friends. I also told Dan he was a poor excuse for a husband and is unempathetic, narcissistic, and possibly a psychopath. I am so angry and disappointed in Dan, and he fake apologized. But after 24 years, I know he doesn't mean it. He now is just ignoring it and trying to act like nothing happened. I refuse to let this go. I really expected more sympathy from my husband. Am I wrong to be heartbroken over my friend's sudden death? Am I in the wrong for being angry at my husband? Edit by recommendation for clarity. My husband Dan lies constantly about his past. Jobs he supposedly had, tells people he was a pro hockey player, tells people he was a cop, has no emotions except anger unless it's about him, cheated on me multiple times, never helps at the house. We just had 2 major hurricanes. He hasn't made one call or arranged one thing or picked up one tree branch. He got me arrested once by lying to the police. He treated Ron like crap. He treats my brother like crap. He knows I had a childhood trauma, but puts me in situations that trigger it. I'm disabled 4 years, the 20 before that I supported us more financially. Edit for context. The entire time I have been married to Dan, Ron lived in different states. So it's not like we hung out and left Dan alone. Every time Ron visited, Dan was included. Edit, the 2 a.m. thing, Ron and I lived in different states. His visit was planned for months. Dan agreed to it. Ron was staying with us. We stayed up late talking and catching up, my husband included. I had put my then 4-year-old to bed around 8 p.m. and we were just sitting and talking. Ron was a talker, honestly a mile a minute sometimes. Lol. Politics came up. Ron and Dan disagreed. Dan got mad and told Ron to get out. Ron asked to please stay until daylight, but Dan was adamant. Then it woke up our son and Dan was livid, so Ron left. He had to find a hotel after 2 a.m. in a strange town. Let's start judging. I have a male best friend and a non-jealous husband. However, if I ever described my bestie as the only person I trust 100%, I think my non-jealous husband might start questioning the relationship. I believe you when you say there was nothing romantic, but that doesn't mean the relationship wasn't harmful to your husband. How would you feel if he had a female friend and he told you she was the only person he completely trusted? I guarantee you it wouldn't make you feel kindly towards her or feel good about yourself. I don't know whether your husband is a naturally jealous or offensive person, but I do believe that there have been times your friendship crossed normal bounds of acceptability, and that hurt your husband, and you showed him the same lack of empathy you now accuse him of. Everyone sucks. I get that you are grieving over this friend of 34 years, but this stood out to me. He was the only person I could truly trust 100% in this world. So I can see where your husband might be jealous. You seem to have deeper issues with your husband if he isn't one you have 100% trust in, given that I can see why he might think the way he does. I think the 2 of you need to get some therapy for your marriage. Next up, so my 29 sister, 32F, has 3 kids, 10, 7, 5. Last month she asked me if I could watch them for a weekend while she and her husband went on a short anniversary trip. I agreed because I love my nieces and nephew, but I made it clear that I needed at least 2 weeks' notice because I work long hours, and I'd have to rearrange my schedule. Fast forward to this past week. I asked my boss for time off, cleared my weekend, and stocked my house with everything the kids would need. Friday afternoon rolls around, and I'm waiting for her to drop them off. Suddenly, I get a text from her saying they're not coming. She decided last minute that they were going to a family-friendly resort instead and didn't need me to watch them anymore. No apology, just, we'll do it another time. I was frustrated because I had completely cleared my weekend, turned down plans with friends, and rearranged my work schedule for this. I responded by telling her it wasn't cool to cancel on me last minute like that, especially when I went out of my way to help. Then, 2 days later, she called me again asking if I could watch the kids the following weekend. Apparently, something came up with her original plan, and she needed someone to watch them after all. I told her no, I wasn't available. She got upset and said I was being selfish and punishing her kids for something that wasn't their fault. Now she's mad at me, and my parents are saying I should be more understanding, because things come up when you're a parent. I don't have kids, but I feel like it's just basic respect to not cancel on someone last minute and then expect them to be available whenever you want. So, am I in the wrong for refusing to watch my sister's kids after she canceled on me last minute? Edit. Wow, I didn't expect so many hing. You're not in the wrong responses. Thanks, everyone. I was starting to feel guilty about standing my ground, but it's good to hear that others agree it's important to set boundaries, even with family. I love my nieces and nephew, but my time is valuable too. and I'm glad I'm not being unreasonable here. Thanks again for all the support. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Just tell them you cannot rearrange your schedule back to back like this. And you told her you need at least 2 weeks, so she already knew that chances were very unlikely. Her trying to guilt you is in poor taste. Additionally, just because your sister was inconsiderate and you are now saying no, this does not mean you are punishing the kids. I'd probably emphasize that point the most. Instead of having her ask for a weekend for you to babysit, you could ask for a weekend to take them in the future for a makeup weekend for bonding. Take control of when you see them instead of relying on your flaky sister. You're not in the wrong. Sometimes people with kids tend to think people without this responsibility have no life and no other commitment. I had to have a talk with my family recently about this. They were taking for granted that I was available last minute to put my life aside and go for weeks at a time to help out my sister and her kid, or take care of my parents' house while they were away, or going to my brother's place to take care of his dog for a week, etc. I sat them down and explained how disrespectful it was to put me in situations where I was either the jerk for saying no to help out family and feeling guilty, or I was the one giving up on all my plans to help out. Either way, I was miserable. One of the reasons I made the choice of not having kids was because I didn't want the responsibility or having to be tied down. Yet my family was seeing that choice as a free babysitter. But after a long talk with them, they understood where I was coming from, and I realized that I was allowed to say no. Still working on that. So I think the best thing to do is to have a talk with your family. You're not in the wrong. You're not punishing the kids, you're punishing her. The kids will be fine. It's just going to be a PETA for her to make sure they're fine. As for what your parents said, yeah, I'm sure things do come up when you have kids, but it's your responsibility as a parent to handle those things. Anyway, this wasn't something coming up. It was her deciding to take them with her because she wanted to.